Welcome, everyone, and you are listening to The Last Dinosaur, and I'm your host, Chris Haversano. On today's podcast, we will have Steve Bomgardner, Head of Business Development at SailPlan. Steve sailed master on drilled ships and since coming ashore has held various management positions, including advisory roles for startups. Steve is currently Head of Business Development at SailPlan. SailPlan helps their clients chart and maintain their progress towards ESG goals and carbon reduction through vessel-specific true emissions monitoring, AI-assisted emissions optimization, and simplified emissions reporting. Welcome to the podcast, Steve. That sounds like a really interesting thing that you've embarked on.
Definitely. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me.
So, I always like to start off with people, especially people, we've had a few folks who started on a less digital way, whether in the maritime industry or not, and then kind of has pivoted towards digital. So tell us a little bit about how you've gotten towards SailPlan.
I was a Texas A&M graduate. I started out, my first job was on the lightering vessels, pretty much the lowest technology you could imagine, completely dangerous. One of the things I really did not enjoy was the big fenders on the back deck and having to monitor and basically do that operation. So I came off those lightering boats. Started applying to everywhere. It was a big downturn actually in the industry. I was about to go sail AB with Chevron, and I get a call from Transocean. Called me up and was like, "Hey, we're Transocean. Do you want to be a assistant DPO?" And I mean, honestly, at the time, I didn't know really what that was. And I said, "Okay, what is that?" And they were like, "Oh, this is what you do. You do the dynamic positioning, the 3-week on, 3-week off schedule." They told me then the salary, and I said, "Sign me up. Where do I need to go?" I started my career with Transocean as a third mate ADPO. I spent about 2 weeks training on Discover Enterprise, and then I went right over the Deepwater Horizon. So I spent about 3.5 years on her. I was not on there when she went down, but I do know most of the people on there. I'm actually good friends. I went to high school with the captain of the Horizon. He was actually just at my wedding. He was one of my groomsmen. So he was on there. I kind of went from Transocean, went over to Seadrill, did a lot of projects for Seadrill in the shipyard. Left Seadrill, did some more projects for the Chinook in China, was a part of the project team with their brand new, basically their first semi-submersible that was going to be Chinese built, Chinese owned, Chinese manned, the HYSY 981. So, kind of going through there, I started getting so interested in the technology because offshore was always above, I think, most of the other industries or the other markets for technology. I mean, the dynamic positioning systems, the hydroacoustic systems, the riser management systems, the drill floor, which, basically could be autonomous right now. I mean, we talk autonomy now, and basically drill ships and drilling rigs with dynamic position were already doing autonomy because that's basically what your DP system was doing, was basically hands-free navigation and hands-free station keeping by utilizing sensors and whatnot. I did the thing in China, and then I wanted to go back and sail on my license, and I went over to Pacific Drilling as chief mate. Was chief mate for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and then I was given a brand new drill ship, a 7th generation drill ship. I was the youngest in the industry. I was 31 years old to be given a drill ship as master OIM, to oversee it from steel cutting all the way through delivery, sea trials, customer acceptance, client acceptance, and then the price of oil just crashed. All the contracts got pulled. We went to warm stack to cold stack to hot stack, all of these fancy terminologies for reduction of man or reduction of people on board. And so I did that for a while and just got tired with it, and then decided to come ashore. I was always, I guess, passionate with technology. It was hard for me to come ashore being so offshore centric because everyone thought, oh, well, when the industry comes back, you're just going to leave. You're going to go back offshore. Or what do you know, or how can you translate what you did on an offshore installation to shore base? But there is a lot of overlap there. When you're offshore and you're a master IM, you're managing multiple departments, third parties, budgets, daily operating expenses. There's so much that goes into that, and it really does actually translate into running companies and doing financials or accounting. There's that base there, whether that's doing safety management or whether that's doing even business development, because we're always trying to sell ourselves. And that's what you did offshore with the client. You always had to sell yourself on a daily basis. So, and then I did registries, I was at the second largest Liberia, and then I was at Bahamas Maritime as their managing director of the Americas. Got to work with a great bunch of people. And on the back, I was advising multiple startups. And I was kind of behind the scenes with SailPlan. We got a very large influx of cash, very large Series A from a tier one VC, and they've been great ever since, and basically gave us runway for a long time, and we've hit the ground running. It's just been something that's, you see all of the change in the industry. There was always that people in maritime were so scared to adopt any type of new technology. They were so scared of being that first implementer, and seeing that starting to open up for the last couple of years, and people are starting to realize that, technology is the key to our future, not just in maritime, but for everything.
When you go into offices and you kind of see that sort of apprehension, right? I mean, because, right, you still have a lot of people that are going to have very much a kind of standoff point of view, like, yeah, like this is okay, but I know what's going on my ship. And then you have a whole other new generation where everything is digital, can be trusted. And then kind of, I think we're probably in the generation in the middle, the Gen Xers. I go, yeah, we get it, but maybe we need to have some validation. What is your kind of going in pitch when you talk to people about technology? And I know one of the themes that keep coming up is people are always afraid of, this is going to take my job. All right. And right. What I keep hearing, and I've heard on a lot of different of the podcasts, and it's one of the phrases that I really love, is that technology is never going to take the way of people for two reasons. One is you need to have deep domain experience with someone like yourself, even though what you're talking about is agnostic, right? Because it's a mission, so it's any ship. And then two, you always have to have the human in the loop, right? And are these the things that you talk about? Because you can have the technology and the data, and it's only as good as somebody who interprets it and can apply their real world knowledge and use. How is that stuff that is that a line of thinking that you go towards?
Yeah. And maybe there was part of me that thought that was going to be, a hurdle, but that's one of the reasons why I'm at SailPlan. I mean, we have not had resistance. Every customer that I've honestly had a conversation with loves what we are doing. And it's because we've taken that software and hardware and we've integrated that, and we're doing something that's completely different than anywhere else. There's nowhere, it's my job to find competitors, and I've not found an apples to apples competitor. Yeah, there's other people that have a 100% software solution that, they basically take the same thing that these companies can do on an Excel spreadsheet. They put it into their little system and they give you a Bentley on your computer. It looks amazing. They give you all these estimated numbers, and that's great, but it's still a Yugo under the hood. Like, it's not really giving me a true value. And I can't BS those people, because this is what you're going to be truly measured on. This is the hardware that we're going to install. This is how we're going to marry that together. And we're then going to help you, optimize your engines. We're going to help you understand your full greenhouse gas footprint, not just your CO2. And that piques everyone's interest, because everyone's CO2, but no one can concern about particulate matter. No one's concerned about methane. I know people are. When we start harping on those and we start talking about those, particulate matter, how bad it is for your lungs, 2.5 versus 10, methane, LNG, yes, right now is the fuel of the future because of the CO2 reduction, but methane is still a worse greenhouse gas than CO2, but it has a lower shelf life. But again, people want to know exactly what they're putting out there. We've been able to marry all that together. We also do, we do CO2, we do SOx, NOx, we do hydrocarbons, we do particulate matter, we can do O2. So when we start talking about all of that, people get excited, because now they're actually understanding everything as opposed to just one small piece. If you would have asked me, Chris, that a year ago, I might have had a different answer where, yeah, I think there's going to be pushback, but I have not had pushback from any major commercial clients, from any industry, whether that's the bulker industry, which we've engaged with, and the cruise industry, which we're engaged with, the offshore industry. It's been welcomed rather nicely. I think it's just because of the team we have behind us, and just of what we're doing. We're not like everyone else, and that's kind of what I'm enjoying with this. Because at Flag, I had a lot of these digital solutions come across my desk, for approvals, or were clients asking, "Oh, what do you think of this? Is this something worth it?" And obviously, I wasn't at Flag when this came, but Maritime is slow to adopt things. But when I guess you have something out there that people want to see, stakeholders want to see. If you're a publicly traded company, you're going to have to report this anyway. So why not report on true emissions as opposed to an estimation? It gives you transparency. And I guess that's really the name of the game too, is, people are now starting to realize that they need to have more transparency in the industry, and especially within their emissions, because you're going to have to pay your taxes. You're going to have to pay an ETS possibly if you're operating an intra-European voyage. Whether you're in the US, there's going to be maybe possibly financing that you want to access. So you're going to have to have that transparent overview for your whole emissions. So I'd want to help you answer that. We've had pushback, but I haven't, which is great to say.
The idea of having this podcast is to talk about, the last dinosaur, and that there are still some areas that people push back on. But I think as kind of people realize the benefits, they push back less. Now, the question that I have, which is kind of interesting, is we see a lot of software only solutions, or we see somebody with hardware only solutions. Walk me through a little bit about how you guys are approaching kind of this two-pronged approach here, because you mentioned there's some hardware, there's some software. I read recently you were deploying some hardware on buoys in the ports. Seems to be an interesting angle. Just talk a little bit about this, because I think this is an interesting topic.
For the aids to navigation, so that people have seen that. So we're working with the U.S. Coast Guard, and aids to navigation is just really a visible aid, and that's really that they've been used for, and that's their main existence. But there's real estate there that can be utilized for so much. So what we've done is we've kind of installed some sensors where we can monitor them for station keeping, for ship strikes, for driftaways, for possible sinking. We also can monitor the light luminosity and the battery status for the U.S. Coast Guard. We do real-time weather that goes to the cloud. We do real-time AIS feeds on there. We can do a real-time, like a 6-axis buoy movement for some insights into sea state, current and swell height. And then obviously there's the atmospheric pollutant part that can do a NOx and a PM and an O3 component. And then that's all sent via shore through a communication system that we put on board. So that's kind of the piece that we're doing with the U.S. Coast Guard. And then so we have the vessel and the port and terminal solution. These companies have this hardware, but they've never understood how to pull the data properly or to integrate that from a software solution. So we've figured out how to marry that, and we figured out that piece, which a lot of these hardware companies either don't have the bandwidth or the R&D to do, or really the understanding of how to do it. There was a large maritime company that uses that basically as a chems provider. So they have the condition emission monitoring center they provide. However, they were not able to pull the data like SailPlan can. And they actually said that in a forum that we were at in Houston, basically said, like, look, we can provide you a piece of hardware, but the information that you get from SailPlan's dashboard, we don't have that capability. So if you want this, an optimization, an alert platform, if you want to understand the three things, the fuel, the engine, and the emissions, basically all three of them, if you want to understand those, SailPlan's the way to go. When we had talked earlier about the software solution, a lot of companies, the software solution will just give you maybe the fuel input. So all you're seeing are certain inputs as opposed to across the whole board. So what we do is we've been able to take the sensors and the hardware, put it like if you went to the doctors and they basically measured your height and your weight and they didn't do anything else. And he said, oh, you're healthy. Are you really gonna, some people might be like, okay, I'm gonna walk out, I'm gonna trust that. But they didn't take your blood, they didn't take an EKG, they didn't do anything else. We do all that now. We've done all that. So now we know the health of the engine. We know what you're putting out and what's going into that engine. And for terminals, it's a little bit different. We do air quality. We also then can pull in different feeds from them. We can do, other truck and train counts to give them that full understanding of like a terminal or a port authority's full-time emissions, and that's across the board. We can specifically identify operations in that port and give them like a benchmarking. So instead of a port going in and electrifying all their vehicles, maybe there's a certain operation that they're like, well, wait a minute, this is where we see a lot of greenhouse gases being emitted by this operation. Maybe we need to figure that out instead of just electrifying our trucks or putting cold ironing on this dock or this terminal. Let's work on this route first. So we really do that, and we do that on vessels as well too. So we're also that key benchmark mechanism for vessel operators, that instead of going out and purchasing air lubrication or purchasing a wind sail or doing a drop in, we basically can say, we can validate those people for those clients, as opposed to spending all that capital expenditure on those high dollar items.
What I think is very interesting is the fact that you guys are targeting the ports as well, because obviously a lot of the focus has been on the ships, and we've had a few different people on here talking about fuel. We had Darren Shelton of Fuel Trust, and he said, I'm going to look at the molecular structure and give you your emissions output, and then combine that with what your engine's doing. We have Zero North that's kind of taking also a holistic point of view, but you're the first person to wind in with the ports. Are you starting off in the U.S.? You're a U.S.-based company, or have you reached internationally? Because obviously, the Europeans very, very interested in this topic. I would suspect that, places that have a very large tourist area, the Bahamas, parts of the Caribbean nations, and even parts of the Far East. We don't normally talk about them in terms of emissions, but I think that those days are going to be over. I think obviously with whatever IMO regulations, I think there are going to be more and more focus on this island is great, but ships come in and they pollute. This is not the end anymore. Are you looking only locally here in the U.S.? Or are you looking internationally there?
We are a U.S.-based company, but we have an international footprint already. For our ports and terminals, I'm sure everyone, it's been public knowledge. It's been put out there. We've launched in Port Fourchon. We've have contracts for other port authorities and terminals under the works to go into. We've got numerous calls with some European port authorities as well, which you said with the cruise and the Bahamas. Yes. Look, everyone wants to, have sustainable tourism, sustainable cruising. So that is we feel it's a good market for the cruise industry. And in the U.S., the FCC is requiring, the scope 1, 2, and 3 reporting. And so we basically simplify that for those terminal operators or those ports authorities. And I kind of differentiate the two, because you've got the authorities who are the lease landholders, and you've got the terminal operators who lease that land. So in essence, you've got clients either, you've got in the private sector, you've got clients that are also in the government sector. So, we've been dealing with both of them. The man hours that can be reduced just by our reporting mechanism is basically proof of value. Just if that's all they got from it, that basically pays for itself. And that's something that I think has been well received in the industry, is because, now you can allocate man hours to do something a lot more important and compile all of these Excel spreadsheets and all these documents and these truck counts and everything in these ports and terminals. We have simplified it for everyone, and it's a little button you push, and the SailPlan will give you that whole report for the terminal, for the port, and for the vessel, and for your fleet. You can do it by a fleet, you can do it by a single vessel, you can do it by single engines and stuff like that. So we've really simplified that piece, and that alone has really been a big sell. And that doesn't even then go into our optimization. That doesn't even go into our AI modeling, which can be, sometimes sort of cost reduction. Everyone likes to throw out AI. So sometimes I don't think people really understand what AI is, and they think predictive analysis is AI when you have like historical data and then you compile it into like a platform. That's all that is historical predictive analysis. It's not really AI. AI is when you have taken something and you basically built all the data up from it, and then you've taken that, whether it's a sensor or you've taken that piece, and then you basically given a digital twin, made it basically the same. You're getting the same thing, But now that piece is now put onto another vessel, onto another point. It's the same exact component, but yet it's a digital model of something that now acts as a real life piece of equipment. And we'd actually do that. So it's the one thing about this company is there's some ridiculously smart people behind this company. People from Hyperloop, people from AirMap. We have people from the aero industry that are working here. A lot of our software engineers and stuff like that. So we're taking things from the aero industry and marrying that to maritime. And we all know how ahead the aerospace industry is. So that's one thing that I like to tell people is it's not just a bunch of mariners behind this. And we do have a lot. We do have, over 100 years of maritime experience within our team, but we also have some very, very Mensa smart people behind us that has just made this an amazing place to work. I've enjoyed my time here in the short 6-7 months that I've been a full-time employee. Jacob, the CEO, he really has a great vision. And then we have great investors. Our VC has been amazing, and network of people.
Certainly having the background and the horsepower in terms of, really smart people. On the one hand, you have that. And then on the other hand, you got to have that deep domain experience to get into the door to a lot of people, because there's a lot of great ideas. And if you can't tell people like, well, listen, I've done your job, or I know how you do your job. I know how the captain does his or her job. And I could, now this is how we're going to make it easier, I think is really, it sounds like what you guys have been doing there. Pivoting a little bit, what advice and knowledge would you share or like to give or wish you would have had? It's a wide open question when you were at A&M. By the way, you're the first A&M person on this show. We've had a few SUNY guys. I got to get some Kings Pointers, some Mass, some Maine, some Cal Mary. I got to get some of those folks in here. I don't want to, even Great Lakes. I don't want to hear anything from anybody, but, if you would go back and talk to any one of the schools, and I have a lot of respect for the schools, or even, young Coast Guard people coming into the industry, what would you want them to know about it, especially how, the digitization has taken over? I mean, clearly in the offshore industry, it was there. I sailed, my first ship was 1962 built. Now it was in the mid 90s, but it was still a 1962 built ship, the Mobile Seminole. And it wasn't exactly brand new. Saying that, talk to me about like how you would like to see and what kind of things students and especially students at the maritime schools or anybody who's interested should be looking at.
So like if I went into a school to talk to cadets now, I mean, some of the simplest things that, I would try to instill in them is when you're coming out, be humble, be respectful of everyone. I mean, you don't know the progression of where people are going to go in their career. And that's to say, if you come out as a third mate and you're managing people, or if you come out as an AV or an OS, or if you come out on the engineering team, I mean, people underneath you, have 100% respect for them, treat them like how you want to be treated, because this is a small industry. Even though it's large, it is small, and your name is what really is of value to you. And if you get a derogatory, if you get a negative name in the industry, then it's going to hurt your career. And you don't want to be that person. You want to learn from everyone above and below you. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions. That was the one thing, I did. When I was in the offshore industry, I always asked questions, and I wasn't scared. Even when I was a master in OIM, I would go to the drill floor. I would sit on the drill floor and I would sit there and ask the drillers questions and the tool pushers. And I even made them coffee, because it wasn't about my position. It was just about forming those relationships and those bonds with those people, because you could learn so much about their job. And if you show interest in their job, then you get so much more out of them. And that's really it, is showing interest in people. I think sometimes maybe the U.S. cadets, something that hurts them is if they only sail maybe on U.S. flag. One of the greatest things was when I sailed with Seadrill, one rig I was on had 32 different nationalities. And that was an amazing experience, because you learn so much from people in different nationalities, and you can take something from them. We would do like a meeting every day, and we would ask someone from around the room to give us a little piece of their culture, their history, or something about them. And being able to learn that makes you such a better person. And so those experiences, not many people can get outside the maritime industry, because you're around so many dynamic people, so many different cultures. Try to do that. Work overseas. That was a great experience. It really gets you out of your comfort zone as an American. Take the time to travel the world and see the world, experience things. Follow your passion. If you are not happy, do not continue with doing a job you're unhappy, because happiness is worth more than money. And I want to stress that. Does money help? Money helps people, but it does not make you happy. So if you want to work on tugboats, go work on tugboats. If you want to sail blue water, go sail blue water. If you want to be in the engineering and work in technology, go do that. Do everything you can to make the right connections and to show that interest. And if you have to step down one or two positions to get where you want to be willing to do that, because that's going to be worth it in the long run than just to sit and move up in a position and be unhappy. When I came ashore from a captain position, when I went to Liberia, I went down when I would have thought would have been positioned. I don't come right over as a high executive, and that's something that you have to maybe, I guess, swallow as a person, but be willing to do that, because where I am today, I wouldn't change it for the world. And I really have enjoyed my career, my 21 year career, and I'm thankful and grateful for all the people that have mentored me and that I've learned from, and I have mentors still in my life, and I mentor people, and that's something too that you should take with you and always do. But follow your heart, be nice to people, learn from everyone, and just experience what maritime has to offer, because there's so much out there, that you can do. So that's really what I would just tell people to do. And the greatest day of my career was December 19th, 2015, and I was on the Pacific Meltdown, and we pulled 4 people out of the water. They had been in the water for 36 hours. We were in Aruba. Had we not pulled them out, more than likely they would have perished. But that was the greatest time. I was a captain. You never thought that, did you train right? Did you train your crew right? Your training does kick in. And that's something I will tell people, is all this training that gets shoved down your throats and this training that you have to do, it does kick in when it's needed. And we were like a well-oiled machine. The crew was amazing. They were really the ones that pulled the people out of the water. I was just on the bridge coordinating. I really didn't do anything. It was deck crew. It was my chief mate. It was my deck pusher. It's the greatest day and accomplishment as my career as a mariner.
That's a really great story, and I think pretty hard to top. So we won't go any further. But I will add, of course, one other point is what the maritime industry, and especially the schools here, and I'm going to speak from the U.S. experience, but I'm sure it's the global experience, gives amongst, I think, is head and shoulders above any other industry on the planet. And once you're in, once you're in the industry, even if you didn't go to one of the schools, you have this network, this availability to network, to basically pick up your Rolodex. Okay, we don't have those anymore. So pick up your phone or pick up whatever you have and use that to your advantage. Use it to your advantage. I did when I shifted careers within the maritime industry, from being on the commercial side to being on the technology driven side, right? I had to take, kind of like that step. It was more sideways than anything, but really I wouldn't look back. And I've had people tell me, you are much happier than you were in the past doing that. And I really I had some great colleagues, still have some great colleagues, Q88, and now meeting some new colleagues at Vesson as we slowly become, more and more, do more and more things together. And I think what is shown to the Vesson folks is that, because we have more folks, let's say from a more of a natural maritime background, the network of, oh yeah, I know that guy. Just I'll make a phone call, and it just really helps, because it helps in business, it helps in personal and other relationships. And I think that take advantage of that, especially if you go to one of the maritime schools. You have such a massive leg up, and you come ashore, figure out an alumni association, a propeller club thing, Young Ship Texas, Connecticut Maritime Association, Young Ship Cyprus, wherever you sit, there's got to be something to do. Go pay WISTA, fantastic organization. I'm a WISTA mister. Figure out that it's the propeller club. figure out these sort of things, learn where they are, who to contact, because I really think that's the benefit of all that. So, but certainly to top it off, your end story there of saving lives, which is an overlooked part of what we do, what we did train to do as mariners, is something that's overlooked, but obviously super important. With that being said, thank you for coming on the podcast. This was fantastic. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed hearing about SailPlan and about your background, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is great. What you're doing here is amazing. So we appreciate that. We all do in the industry. It's hearing these stories and meeting new people. This is what it's about. So thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of The Last Dinosaur. You can find out more about Captain Steve Bomgardner and what he's doing with SailPlan in the show notes. The Last Dinosaur can be found in all the places you normally get your podcasts, such as iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and on YouTube. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Aversano, wishing you all fair winds and following seas.